Hello again, everyone. It is I, the Unboxing Boy, aka Sean Fennessey, host of the Big Picture Podcast. I've returned to you to speak once again of physical media. Perhaps if you're a listener to the podcast, you heard the great Tracy Letts talk about his life in collecting. He has more than 10,000 discs. I, too, have spent a life collecting, and I've had a prompt to share with you a lifelong process of collecting one film in many formats. Let's talk about that film. It's one of the most important films ever made. That film is called Seven Samurai. It's directed by Akira Kurosawa, the Japanese master who wildly influenced so many great American filmmakers. Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, all of the new Hollywood gang. He's influencing filmmakers to this very day. Seven Samurai is probably his most famous film, among his most beloved and celebrated movies. A movie that set the archetype for the team-up film, set a lot of archetypes for characters, and is an echoing movie through Hollywood history, both before the production of Seven Samurai and after. For fans of the Magnificent Seven, they'll recognize some of those structures. For me, as a movie fan, it's a really important film at the earliest days of getting into international cinema. It's very accessible. It's an action movie, though it is very long. And it's one of those movies that you just see at the top of every list of world cinema classics, along with Kurosawa's Rashomon and Ikiru and a couple of other films that he made in the 50s and 60s. So Seven Samurai, when I was a kid, there was really only one way for me to watch it. I'll show you how. This right here is a VHS cassette. In fact, not one VHS cassette, but two. That's right. Back in the good old days, when I was a child, we couldn't contain all of the power and length and scope and depth of these films on a single tape. We had to put them across two. Seven Samurai runs 208 minutes. That is a practically Brutalist Boy length. And so in order to hold it all in, we needed to issue two VHS tapes. So this production of this VHS, which comes to us from Janus Films, still obviously a part of the Criterion Collection Corporation and has spent decades restoring and distributing classics of world cinema. This was not an easy VHS to come by when I was a kid. In fact, you couldn't go to Blockbuster and find this movie. I wasn't able to find it there, at least. You had to go to your local video store. I went to my local video store and I did rent it, and I eventually convinced my mom to buy this for me. And I think she was very confused why I wanted a black and white samurai movie, but I'd begun reading movie magazines and movie history books. I got very interested in it. And then in the late 80s and early 90s, a new format came along. One that was a little bit foreign to me as a kid with not a ton of disposable income in a family that was not very technology forward, but I'd heard about it. I'd seen it promoted on TV. I got interested in it. I'm referring, of course, to Laserdisc. This is an important piece of media. I'll tell you why. This is a Criterion Collection Laserdisc. This is a format that the Criterion Collection, arguably the best distributor of international and national cinema in the United States, has for us. This early edition is pretty fascinating, looks very good. I no longer own a Laserdisc player, but the last time I looked at this disc, it looked very good. Unfortunately, it takes up a lot of space. It's like owning a record album. It made sense at the time because record albums were still very popular despite the wave of CDs and cassette tapes. But Laserdiscs went out of fashion pretty quickly. Criterion Collection did not go out of fashion, though. And this is really where my story as a physical media collector starts. I had plenty of VHS tapes. I only had a vanishing few Laserdiscs. But man, I had a fuck ton of DVDs. This is an important DVD for me and probably for all physical media fans. This is Spine number 2 in the Criterion Collection. This is the second film that was issued by the Criterion Collection when it moved to this format. And this is one of the first 5 DVDs I owned. And for decades, this was my active copy of Seven Samurai. If I wanted to watch this movie, I looked at the DVD. In the last 10 years, there has been a Blu-ray issued by Criterion, but I didn't buy it. I don't totally know why I didn't buy it. I had a sentimental connection to this particular edition. This was my first Criterion edition. It was my first international film that I owned, and it's a movie that has stuck with me over the years. And so I just hung on to it. I didn't buy the Blu-ray. I didn't think I needed it. And then a scant few months ago, the Criterion Collection did something. They issued this movie on 4K UHD, which is the highest quality format. And I bought it. This edition is unopened. It's been sitting in my home for weeks. I feel almost nervous to watch it. When Tracy Letts was on the show, he said, you're not really seeing the movie until you see it in these formats, in these expanded restorations. I've been watching this movie on these VHS cassettes, on this Laserdisc, on this DVD, which is so worn and broken. You can see there's scratchiness on the outside. Are there any scratches on the disc itself? Looks fairly pristine. It's maybe some fingerprint smudges over the years. I have large hands, as you can see. I tend to smudge things sometimes. So this edition, which I'm just going to open in front of you and you can watch me open plastic. Why not, right? This is the essence of owning physical media. It's all about breaking this open. When you've got these soft cover boxes, which I like, that Criterion issues from, much easier to open the plastic. You know what I don't like is the hard plastic, where you need to get out some sort of X-Acto knife or a pair of scissors. No, I want to be able to use my hands. You know, I'm really in the shit when it comes to physical media. I want to touch it. Let's see what's in here. I assume there's a film in here. There is a film. Here you see, inside the slipcover, new work of art, a still from the film. You've got your classic, your booklet full of essays. I'll tell you who was written the essays in this edition. Kenneth Turan, famed Los Angeles Times critic, has written The Hours and Times, Kurosawa and the Art of Epic Storytelling. There's a tribute from Sidney Lumet, the great Sidney Lumet, who is the subject of a long episode of this show back in July. Who else is in here? Toshiro Mifune, the star of Seven Samurai. Some piece written in his own words. There's an old episode of the Big Picture that you can listen to that Chris Ryan and I recorded back in 2020 at the height of the pandemic, celebrating Mifune's 100th birthday. He would have been 100, of course. And we recommended a lot of the work that he did. This might be the most famous movie he's ever made. So here you can see, when you get one of these super fancy large editions that are 4K UHD from Criterion, you get the movie on Blu-ray, which I never owned before. You get it on, you get the Blu-ray edition supplements. There are a fuck ton of supplements on this. And then, of course, you get the 4K disc. Now, you won't be watching me watch the 4K disc. I think I'm going to watch it tonight in the privacy of my own home. And I'll see if I have a magical, uplifting, emotional experience with it. Or if I look down at my phone. We'll see. I'm 42 years old. I watch 700 films a year. I'm more distractible than ever. But this movie deserves more. It deserves my attention, my time, my care. This movie represents over 30 years of collecting right in front of you. Give it up for Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. This has been The Unboxing Boy. Thank you for spending time with me. We'll see you soon.